Hello everyone, welcome to Mindalia live streaming on behalf of all our team. Today we have the great pleasure of having once again our dear Sunny Chase. Sunny is not only the host of this show, but she is also the host of ABC Solutionary Sundays. Sunny is a producer, moderator, and mythbuster. She is also the chief strategist of the Whole Lifetimes magazine, the longest conscious life magazine in America. We're going to be having a very interesting conversation with a very interesting guest. But before starting with them, we just want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness in the planet. You can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment on this video, or sharing with someone that you know that can benefit of the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, we have an active chat when we are live streaming. We invite you to collaborate with us, and we also want to invite you to like not only this channel but also the Mindalia Televisión channel, where we are developing content in Spanish, and the Mindalia Televisao, where we are broadcasting in Portuguese information as interesting and as beautiful as the one that you are already used to see in Mindalia TV. So let's not delay this any further. I have the great pleasure of introducing Sunny.
Right.
Great. Feeling particularly thankful for today and feeling
Aw.
very enthusiastic about what we're going to be doing, because I know there's many interesting things we're going to be talking, and I feel something else is that I feel very resonant with the topic that you brought us today and the guest that you brought us today.
I'm so glad. And one thing I want to tell you, I lived in South Africa when I was a teenager. And when I lived there, I was really interested in, I've been studying spirituality, and when I was in high school, I was studying comparative religion, and, it's just been a thing for me for a really long time. And being aware of spirituality my whole life, I was one of those lucky people where it never broke. It was just kind of always with me. So when I was in Africa, I was thinking I really wanted to go to Yogananda's ashram. I thought, well, I'm not too far. It's a hop, skip, and an 8,000-mile jump to go to the ashram in India. And then I realized that would be too easy for me. And what I really needed to do was go to the hardest ashram in the world, which would be LA, California. If I could make it there, I could make it anywhere. And so I came back. I left my family, part of my family, my other family lived in LA. And then I moved kind of quickly up to Northern California into Marin County. And a book came to me. I don't know where it came from, and I don't know even the name of it, but it was some story of St. Francis of Assisi. And God, it makes me cry already. Anyway, I read this book, and I was so brokenhearted because I realized I'm so far away from him. Like, I'm so far away from that beautiful, beautiful way of life, of living. I'm just like, whoa, girl. I felt so humbled, and I felt so, it was just such a pain in my heart. And so ever since then, among many other teachers, I just sort of felt like St. Francis was uh, kind of the gold standard in a way of just how to live. And, his story, for I'm sure most people know, but I mean, he had a similar story kind of to Siddhartha, where he came from riches and all of that and really realized that wasn't the answer for him. And, forsake all that and lived a very different life. And so today, when we're going to be talking with James Twyman, we're going to be talking all about St. Francis. And so I wanted to just start the show by singing just a little bit of the prayer of St. Francis, even though it turns out maybe that he didn't actually write it, but I'm going to just sing this for us. Okie dokie. Here we go. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, bring your faith. Where there's despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me then see our light. Where there is sadness, let them feel our joy, our joy. So I'll leave it there because I want James to do much more music that I'm going to be doing. So I want to introduce James for our people. James Twyman is a master of many things. So one way that he's known is a peace troubadour. And he does the most magnificent things where he's gone to the most dangerous places on earth, no joke, and gathered the consciousness of thousands of people to bring peace to places like North Korea, places like Iraq, not places like, I mean, actually North Korea and Iraq, and other places on this planet where there is, where he is, where there's hatred, he's sowing love for real. And he brings his instrument of peace with him, and he goes there with other people like Greg Braden and other masters of intention. And so that's just one of the things he does. He's created beautiful movies that I absolutely love. He wrote The Moses Code. And today we're going to be talking a lot about his, what he stepped into in the last couple of years, which is his life all about St. Francis of Assisi. And I just read his book in one day, which I think is a first for me. I don't know if I've ever done that. I'm not that fast a reader, but it's called Giovanni and the Camino of St. Francis. So I'd like to just bring James on right now.
Hello. Great to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So just join us. I would just love to hear you, just whatever's on your heart to say. I just feel like I want you to speak. Speak to us, James.
Oh, well, to begin, I just want to share my excitement to be able to be here with both of you and for everyone who is watching this, to share something that I think we all feel, Sonny. You described it so beautifully. There's something about St. Francis that draws us. And it doesn't matter what religion you are or where you're from or when you lived. For the last 800 years, he has been the most compelling Christian, I think, in the world, and one of the most compelling people, because he showed us something that is so essential to what it means to be an instrument of peace. In fact, I'll tell you one thing that happened to me that led to me wanting to write this musical that we're going to talk about. And it was a quote that I heard. I heard about it, then I looked it up to make sure it was true, and it is true. Someone who said something about St. Francis, 100 years or so ago. And I'll tell you basically what this person said, and you probably won't be able to guess who it was, but this person basically said, our revolution failed. What we really needed were 10 St. Francis of Assisi's. And I could have you guess for a while, but I'll just tell you. That was Vladimir Lenin, the architect of the Russian Revolution, who was an atheist, who didn't even believe in any of this, but he recognized the power of someone giving everything and being an instrument of peace. And he said basically that he was saying that what they tried to do in Russia failed. It created more atrocities than it solved. That what was really needed were 10 people like St. Francis who were 100% committed. And I looked at that and I thought, gosh, that applies today as well. I mean, what if there were 10 people just like St. Francis, who gave everything, who said, I am here only for one reason, and that's to be an instrument of peace. Is that what we need in this world today? Because it's so easy for us to look around, especially in our country. I live in Mexico now, but I still keep my eye on what's going on there, and it's so disturbing. And I really believe that in many ways it's similar to what was happening 800 years ago in the time of St. Francis, because he lived at the end of what we now call the Dark Ages.
Mm.
And it was a dark, very difficult time, but something about the witness of Francis of Assisi changed something. And it did not take long before the Renaissance happened, largely because of him. He created an opening that
Mm.
became the Renaissance. And I wonder if more of us were to commit ourselves in the same way, are we on the brink of a similar Renaissance? Are we coming out of this dark age that we find ourselves in and have now the opportunity, as he did 800 years ago, to step up our game and to bring a whole new era of light? So I think
Ooh.
Francis has a lot to teach us today, even though he was a medieval character. The similarities between his time and our time are very interesting.
Well, I think the beautiful. Thank you for that. That's a great message of hope, I have to say, because it can feel like we're going into a dark hole, or we felt like what was down or what was the bottom of the barrel 2 years ago feels like, wait, what? That we're way below that. So
Nowhere near it.
um, yes, but cracking it open like that. I mean, I think the reason that I was so brokenhearted, but it was, of course, my heart breaking open also, which is a beautiful thing to have happen, as painful as it can feel, was that it gave me the opportunity. When I say, it's like the gold standard of my life, when I think, okay, sometimes people say, what would somebody do? We have people in our lives. There's the bumper sticker, what would Jesus do? But there's also, I'm sure we all have people in our lives, hopefully we do, where we in a situation and we think, gosh, what would my mom do? Or someone of very, very high integrity and very high moral ground, when we're in a place where we could kind of go a little dark or just reach out of ourselves a little bit and reach high. And that's what I've had. That's what sort of St. Francis has been for me, my
Yeah.
whole life. It's like,
Well, me
wow.
too. I remember when I was just a kid, and I was raised in a very Catholic family, and I always had this great love of St. Francis. And when I was about 17, I met a Franciscan named Brother Francis Dominic, and he lived in Chicago, and he was just such an amazing, loving man. And I decided that's what I'm going to do. So I left home right after high school, entered the Franciscan order. I was there for only a couple of years, but it stayed with me. That's the thing about Francis. Once he gets a hold of you, he doesn't let go. And the same thing
Mm.
with Claire, by the way. So often we talk about Francis, but we forget about St. Claire. Francis would not have been where he was if it was not for this feminine counterpoint of St.
Mm.
Claire. And she,
Mm.
because she was a cloistered nun, does not get as much credit, but she was just as important, and even more so than Francis. She lived much longer. Popes and bishops and cardinals and leaders of the world would come to her for her wisdom. And
Mm.
at least twice, she saved Assisi from complete destruction. And so it's important for us to remember the balance between Francis and Claire. And so for me, growing up, that was very present. I became a Franciscan, and here I am now. I've taken private vows as a Franciscan now. So it's like I've come full circle, and I think a lot of us are feeling that we're coming back to that which connected with our hearts in the beginning. For me, that was Francis and this simple, committed vision that he had. And now I went through 25 years of writing books and making movies and all these great things, but it's different now. Now it's much more simple, much more humble. But I think this is the place where I really need to be and want to be.
so beautiful. And I'm thinking of course, many people may remember the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon by Zeffirelli so many years ago. I was at a shindig last night and people remembered that movie and how powerful it was. And I love the fact that my name is actually Claire. My whole name is Mary Claire Sunny Chase. My parents thought, well, it doesn't cost more to give her more names. So, but I always love the Claire part of my name. Most people don't know, but I've always loved that name, and it comes from my grandmother. And I also, and it's spelled the same way, Clare, and it basically means clear, which I remind again, it's an aspiration for me. I don't feel that I've arrived fully to my name yet, but it's an aspirational name for me. Definitely. And so, James, I was wondering if you wanted to do any music, or can we talk specifically about the project?
Well,
And
sure.
I'd love to hear you sing.
Well, singing has always been my favorite thing, as you probably know. Uh,
Yes.
the thing about music is that it slides around all of those ideas and filters that we normally process through information. And I like to believe that it goes into the back door, and therefore it enters our heart fully formed. And St. Augustine once said, when we sing, we pray twice. And that's why I think music is so valuable. And that's why when I wrote that book, Giovanni and the Camino of St. Francis, I also decided that I wanted to do something different on the tour. And that was to write a one-man musical based on the life of St. Francis, which I began performing earlier this year, and which next year will be going to Broadway. I'm so excited to be able to go to New York for 2 weeks and to share this musical, which is, by the way, called Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. Zeffirelli did not come up with that title. It is based on the most famous prayer of St. Francis. As you said, Sonny, he did not write what we think of as the prayer of St. Francis. That showed up in the early 20th century. But he did write a beautiful prayer called the Canticle of the Creatures, or Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. And it was actually the first thing that was ever written in what we now know as the Italian language. So it was a very important prayer. But without talking too much, let me share one of the songs from the musical. And I love this song because it emphasizes the joy and the passion of Francis. His whole message was just be like a child today. You don't need to overcomplicate this. Love is uncomplicated. So I wrote this song, and this is one of the songs that's in the musical. Be like a child today. Don't overcomplicate what is simple. Yes, so simple. Love's power in you is strong. You don't need to wait so long. It's simple. Oh, so simple. I do believe that you can finally see what I've tried to get you to understand. It isn't hard to see what has always been true. If you take my hand, just take my hand. Be like a child today. You don't need to throw away what's simple. Oh, so simple. I've tried so many times, but it was all just in my mind. It was simple. Yes, so simple. The simple point is to never hesitate to offer the love you feel inside. That's the only way to never complicate, and to keep your heart open wide. Be like a child today. You don't need to throw I'm telling you that love alone is true. It is simple, yeah, so simple. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's so simple. Love is simple. Love is so simple. Love is so simple. It is simple. Love is simple. Be like a child today. You don't need to throw away what's simple. Yeah, so simple.
Mm, beautiful. Oh, you know, it's such a beautiful idea, and it's so com- it's something I think about a lot too. Being in kind of the sacred spiritual conversation all the time, and also with the just the metaphysical, the philosophical, the psychological, the scientific. You know how complicated it can get, and um, just in the conversation. And so that is a song that would be so great to sing just before we brush our teeth every day. It's so simple. Just don't throw away what's simple. I mean, what a beautiful song, James. I love that song. And the whole, pardon me?
It's a fun song.
It's such a fun song. Do
I
people
want
sing with you?
Yeah, yeah. At the end, I get them all singing, "Love is so simple." And the musical itself is very lively. In fact, I could say that people can go right now and watch the first 20 minutes of the musical, and they can get a real feel for it themselves if they go to uh, stfrancismusical.com. And that's
Perfect.
ST, not SANT, but stfrancis.com. They can see the tour schedule, because I will be traveling across the US starting on January 4th, penniless, without any support or any help, traveling from Oregon all the way to Washington to do this musical on Broadway. And so people can see if I'm going to be coming to your city, but more importantly, you can watch the first 10 minutes of that musical right there. So if you want, you can see it right now.
So
Not right
perfect.
now, after you watch this interview.
Right. Well, and what yeah, the idea of simple, the idea of, uh, you know, stripping it down, you know, I think that's something that is so important. And also, you know, I don't think it necessarily means, for this is something that I've learned when it comes to in my many decades of living, that there really is a place for all of us. I don't necessarily believe that everyone needs to, you know, denounce everything and live like St. Francis. I think there are places for people to do all different things. Just like I think in activism, you know, there are some people who can take to the streets, and there are people who can write legislation, and there are people who write songs, and there are people who write books and movies to have that conversation happen.
Yeah.
And there are people who have conversations to up level the consciousness. So I do feel that we all have a part of it. And yet again, with the message of Saint Francis, you know, or again Siddhartha, with you know, that message of going within and knowing that all our gifts are within, then it does make everything else more simple and more fun.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
you think?
I think we are all called to experience and express this in different ways. And for some of us, it does mean stripping ourselves of everything that is not important, so that we can reveal that which is the only thing that is, which is us living from our heart, us being instruments of peace. And so for some people, like St. Francis or Siddhartha, it means leaving the riches of the world to embrace the riches of heaven. But I
Mhm.
do believe that regardless, we are all called to give everything. If you want everything. In fact, maybe toward the end, I'll play a song from the musical called Everything. And it just shows that when we give everything, we receive everything. If we give half, we're going to only receive half. And the magic happens when we are 100% committed. And that's what Vladimir Lenin really meant. And he saw Francis, whether he believed in his message or not, he saw someone who was 100% committed to peace. And if we did that in our own unique way, me traveling across the US penniless in imitation of St. Francis to perform this musical on Broadway, or you in your own way, or anyone else, it is about giving everything. And of course, realizing that this world that we find ourselves in is not the end goal. Francis, Artha, all the great mystics understood this very well, that this is not our home. This is a school. You could even say it's a prison. I could talk for days on that. But to try and just keep heaping other stuff and riches and fame on, we see that it doesn't work. I think it was Jim Carrey who said, I wish everyone could be famous so that they could realize that that's not what it's all about. That's not what
So
the,
true. Ooh,
yeah.
that just gives me the chills.
So we
Well,
have to
and
do everything.
you know, one thing that you were saying reminds me of when I was reading the book Giovanni and Camino of St. Francis. I was so struck by Giovanni as a person. He was so wise, and he's young. You know, he's a young chap in your well, maybe a movie, but in your book so far. And one of the things that he said that I try to do in my own life, but I think is so important, when he was chatting, he said, I'm not looking for the right answers. I'm looking for the right questions.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I just wanted you to maybe chat a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest,
Reachy.
yeah, we all think that we're here to find the answers, or that we already have the answers. And as Giovanni says in the book, it really is about asking the right questions and then just holding still and listening for an answer that is beyond this world. An answer. I was talking earlier because I live in Mexico. We have a spiritual community here called Namaste Lake Chapala. We were just talking about this right before the interview, that when you receive that answer, it feels almost like you're holding on to a rope, and there's someone on the other side of that door in heaven just pulling you along and pulling you into that experience. And that's how you know, when you feel that draw, that pull into an experience that you can't understand mentally, you can't get it intellectually, but if you hold still, it gets you. That's what I think Giovanni meant, is you have to ask the right questions and then hold still. Don't try and fill in the answers. Realize, as Francis did, that you don't have any answers. Be humble. You don't know how to do this. If you knew how to do this, you would have done it a long time ago. So humility is one of the key pieces in the spiritual journey. That's where a lot of people falter. They read a few books, they go to a few workshops, and they think, okay, I got it. Now I have all the answers. No, you're just beginning to ask the right questions. So now hold still and listen like Francis did. And something's going to happen through you that has nothing to do with anything of this world. And people are going to feel it because it's the most compelling thing in the whole universe. When someone's on fire with love, like Francis was, it changes everything. When people just come near you, they feel that fire. So that's what we're all called, is to be on fire with this love. And when I wrote the book Giovanni and the Camino of St. Francis, it was really me just wanting to share the fire of St. Francis in a new way, in a more modern context. And to give a little bit of background to that, there's this thing called the Camino of St. Francis that goes through Italy on the way to Assisi, where he lived. Many of us have heard of the Camino de Santiago. This is a different Camino. I've walked it 4 times now. I just got back a couple of weeks ago from the 4th.
Oh.
And it's such a beautiful walk through Tuscany and Umbria. And the first time I was ever walking, I just began imagining this story of a woman coming from Portland who has been having a really hard time with her life. And she meets this young Italian guy named Giovanni, and they become Camino partners. And though she resists him the whole way, he in a very gentle, loving way opens up her heart so she can let go of the past, and she can come in to that, you know, that love that he represents. So I played with this idea for years, and finally, maybe a year and a half ago, I sat down and started writing, and Beyond Words was kind enough to put the book out, and it just a wonderful story, and I'm so happy with how it turned out.
Well, one thing about that book, I love it so much, and there were so many messages I got from it, and one of the messages I got that I think is so important, especially for people at a certain age who may have regret about how things have gone, perhaps even with their kids, or even with their parents, or with just anybody personally, let alone career things. But I'm thinking more like Anna's story, where it's more familial and more, regret about how things went.
Mhm.
And I just kept remembering something that I say to my kids, who were, and I have whatever emotions I have about that. I say, not all the chapters are written. There's still more chapters. Yes, those have been written, but we can always start again. We can if we want to, if we choose to, and just come on, people, let's do it. Like, if even right now, if there are people that in your life where you feel like it's done, it's over, or whatever, I mean, it just makes me cry. But like, just call them. Just start again. Just know that you can start from here, and let them know that you're a new person, and no doubt they're a new person too. So I just want to give us all permission to do that. So yeah, let's do that, guys. And it's so important to know that we haven't, we're still breathing. We're still breathing. Our chapters are not all written, right, James?
That's right. Francis once said, I've done what I was given to do here. Now it's up to you. Now do what you came to do. And we all were, I think, first of all, we're here on purpose. None of us showed up, especially in this time, accidentally. We all have a role to play. And for most of us, those roles are not grandiose. They don't necessarily mean that we're going to be, on a radio program like this, or a TV program rather. But it does mean that we are coming here to demonstrate that only love is real, and that's the only solution that's going to change everything. We talked before about this sort of shadowy age we find ourselves in, and the need for a new renaissance. Well, we all play a role in initiating that new renaissance, and we just have to relax, and we just have to ask for guidance, and we have to be committed. We have to give 100%, as we said before. So
Yeah.
often we think, well, if I read a few books, or if I meditate once in a while, that's all I need to do. No, you have to give everything. If you want everything, you have to give everything. And you need to find your own way to do that, because it's going to be different for each one of us. For me,
Yes.
traveling across the US penniless is my way of giving everything. Doing this musical, writing these books, that's my way. But everyone's going to find their own path into that. And if more and more of us do that, then those 10 St. Francises that Lenin talked about are going to show up, and everything's going to change then.
Well, thank you for that. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about, again, the creativity and the opportunity and the allowing that happens when we know we don't have all the answers. Humility is such a great gift that comes to people that have lived a little while. um, and knowing that the expression, it's such a great feeling to know that we don't know. And the more we know, we don't know, and all of that. But it's really true. And I think when that looking for the right questions, feeling through to the right questions. I mean, of course, that's something that I always love to do with you guys that I have on my show, and finding what's going to bring something original out of you, or something maybe you haven't chatted on every other show you've had. That's something that I hope can happen with what we do, with what I do. And the listening, the allowing that I hope that I can do when someone brings something new and unexpected. We never script these shows. They're completely, we do a bunch of work ahead of time, and then boom, we press a button and we just go. And I think the allowing, if we always did that, and even in conversation, again, with our friends and family who we maybe have something with that we're going to call this week, one of the things we can do is just dive into deep questions. You know, what do we really want to know? I mean, not just the regular stuff, but what's something that is just so delicious that we want to know, or so intimate that we just would have never asked, or you know, that kind of thing, diving into something that's maybe showing our vulnerability, our humility, our naivete, our not knowing, our, and you know, something that isn't, that we might not be proud of, but just come on, let's just allow it. Let's just allow it to be and play in that world and be simple and and you know, and have that kind of also allowing for new ideas to come through. Oh yeah, I see a guitar. Like the kids, you know, who are coming through and are being activists and they're making stuff happen. They have a new way just because they don't know what's gone on before. They're just doing what they're doing because they're doing it. And that's what I think so bitchin', to be able to have move out what we've always known and allow something new to come forward.
Yeah.
So I feel song coming on.
Yeah. Well, it kind of feels like everything we've been talking about. And this is that song I mentioned called Everything, which is in the Brother Sun Moon musical. And it's kind of a love song to God, because we're here, however we perceive that, to give everything to love. So that's what this song is about. My heart's on fire with love for you. There's nothing more that I want to do than spend my life beholding you. That's all I want to do. I am at home within you now. How could I leave and wonder how your precious light enfolds me now, and I will allow, 'cause you're everything to me. You are everything that I see. You are every breath that I'll ever breathe. Everything to me, everything to me, everything. Every breath I'll ever take, it leaves me here where I'm wide awake, and I promise you that I won't forsake this vow I make. My heart's on fire with love for you. There's nothing more that I want to do than spend my life beholding you. That's all I want to do. 'Cause you're everything to me. You are everything that I see. You are every breath that I'll ever breathe. Everything to me, everything to me, everything. 'Cause you're everything to me. You are everything that I see. You are every breath that I'll ever breathe. Everything to me, everything to me, everything. heart's on fire with love for you.
Thank you. Another thing that's so beautiful, and another thing that Giovanni said in the book, Giovanni and the Camino of St. Francis, is he said it's better to be confused by love than to think you understand it.
Yeah.
And that really had me pondering. Um, and again, it goes to the question, right? To keep ourselves expanded and not constricted in a small knowing, kind of opening up to a larger, more expanded not knowing. That
Yeah. That's a great line. And it's a great line because, well, if we think that God is love, ultimately that is the essence of divinity itself. It's the essence of who we are. As it says in A Course in Miracles, God is love and therefore so am I. And saying that I understand love or thinking that I could ever understand love is like saying that I could understand God, that I could understand the infinite. And as soon as you say that, you're wrong. So it's better to live in the mystery. It's better to live in the constant seeking of our own divine nature, of love itself that's within us. Because as I said, the moment you say, okay, I got this, I understand it now, and now I can be the guru or whatever it is I think I need to do now. As soon as that idea pops into your mind, my suggestion is just let it go, because that's the sure sign that you don't have it. If you look at all the great mystics and saints, the key to all of their experience was humility, was the constant yearning, the constant longing for love, for the divine. They're always reaching out in devotion, and devotion is humility. And if we can realize I cannot know in my current state of consciousness, my limited state of consciousness, I cannot know what God or what love is. Now I can become the instrument of that. I can let it be lived through me rather than think that it's all about me. And it makes life much simpler. And as I said before, there's a fire that comes with that. It's like that humility is like breathing oxygen onto a small flame. Before long, it catches the wood that's around it, and next thing you know, it is just a roaring fire, and people are drawn to that. So I just say, don't try and figure it out. Let it figure you out. Don't try and get it.
Amen.
Let it get you. Let the fire get you, and you won't have to do anything because it'll be the fire speaking through you.
Well, and when you're saying that's beautiful, I love that. That's a bumper sticker right there. That's a T-shirt. I'm going to write that down. The other thing, though, as you were talking, I was thinking about us as, like, when you were saying, oh, we've read a few books, or we've gone to 5 retreats. Okay, we're done. You know, that sort of word, we're done, we're complete, we've got it. I got this now. And I was thinking, does a tree do that? You know, when a tree gets through the first bit of soil and becomes, I think it's called a seedling or a sapling or whatever that term is. Yeah, it's made it through. It's turned from a seed to a thing. It's gotten through the soil. It's up and it's out. And does it say, oh, I'm done now? No, it keeps growing and then it becomes a full tree. And then does it say, I'm done now? No, it grows leaves and then it says, okay, now I'm going to grow some fruit. And then I'm going to let everything go. And then, I mean, that's the thing I love about trees. They can spend a year creating 100,000 leaves. And then in a week, they drop them all for a bunch of months. And then they get, because they know they're going to get 100,000 leaves in the next bit. And so I'm thinking of that when we're thinking of ever being finished, you know, ever being done, ever being baked or cooked or whatever. And that constant what's next. And I think of the plants that are always, you know, finding their way to the sun. You know, they peek around this way or they go that way or they're just going straight up or they're going up and then they're going out in such an expanded way. It's like, and how much we can learn from trees. And they love their neighbors and they communicate with them and they give everything if their neighbor tree needs something.
Yeah,
So
well,
they're
nature in this is another connection with Francis.
Mhm.
And, he's always been associated with animals and with nature. He was, Pope John Paul II made him the patron saint of ecology as well. And that was because he saw the face of God in everything, in all creatures, not just in people, not just in churches, but he would just as soon preach to the birds as he would people. And and that's the easy version of St. Francis, what I call the bird bath St. Francis that people love. Of course, he was much more complicated than that. And that's one of the things that I try and bring out in this musical is, who was this guy really? What was he really? Was he just a guy that we see in the bird bath talking to the animals? No, he was much more interesting and even complicated than that. But he has so much to teach us today. So whether it be the way he was with nature or with other people, or how he served the poor or the lepers, he has so much to teach us. And oh, I should say that one of the things we're going to be doing for this musical, especially when we get to New York, in trying to imitate Francis, is when we're in New York every day, me and others, we're going to be on the street near this theater, handing out free tickets to the homeless and to
Oh,
the
beautiful,
inviting them
beautiful.
to come to be our guests at the musical. I don't think any Broadway show has ever done this before, to try and fill half the audience with people from the street. But you know what? That's what
Fantastic.
Francis would have done. And then we're going to have a soup line in the back of the theater so we can all enjoy a nice big thing of soup before we start, and then come into the experience of this. Who was this guy really? And how can we live that same message today? So I'm so excited about this tour and the musical. And
Ooh.
and I should say that the cities that we're going to be going to on the way are Portland, Santa Barbara, I think San Diego, uh, Phoenix, Sedona, Santa Fe, Unity Village outside Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Cleveland, Philadelphia, up Massachusetts, and then finally to New York. So it's going to be a long tour on the way to
Mm.
Broadway.
That is unbelievable. I mean, it's believable. If it was anyone else, I'd say it's unbelievable. But for you, James Twyman, I would say it's believable. And I know that we're coming to the end of our time, so I want to make sure that we do a couple things. And I would really love to go out with a song from you. And another thing that Giovanni said that I want to just say, which I think is so beautiful, is, and remind us all of this, that every thought is a prayer and every desire a benediction. So
Mm.
thank you, Giovanni, and thank you, James, for that, because again, I think that's something we can put on our refrigerator to remind us, or in our bathroom while we're brushing our teeth. And so I want to say to you, thank you so much, James, and to the people out there. I'm going to say a little something because I want to, take us out. But again, every thought is a prayer, guys. So remember that, and of course, our words make such a difference. So let's be so gracious with our words and do something nice for ourselves today that their future self will thank us for. So with that, I want to just remind you guys, to get me on Sunny at Let's Imagine. If you have any questions, email me there, Twitter, all that stuff. And we'll be here next week. And James, just thank you so much. I
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
think we've gotten everything. People know how to reach you too, right?
Well, they can go to my personal website, which is jimmytwyman.com, or you can also go directly to the site for the musical, which is ST for Saint, so stfrancismusical.com. You can find
Beautiful.
everything you want there. If you go to jimmytwyman.com, it'll take you there as well.
Yeah, and you can even go to YouTube and see, because your movies, your music, as in just guys Google Jimmy Twyman and
James
have
Twyman.
fun.
You'll find more
James
on.
or Jimmy.
Well, my website used to be James Twyman, and then someone stole it out from underneath me, so I had to change it to Jimmy Twyman.
Oh, thank you so much.
So this is a very simple song that I could really feel St. Francis sharing these words with us. Stay simple, stay humble, and stay away with me. I've heard heard you calling, and I have answered with everything that you need, with everything that you need. Be like birds of the air, the flowers in the field. For only then will your heart be healed. Just stay simple, stay humble, and stay away with me. Your heart is open and will remain if you but choose to see, if you but choose to see my face in everyone, in everything, everywhere you go. Then like a flower you will open, and you will know, you will know. Just stay simple, stay humble, and stay away with me. There is an answer so deep within you. This truth alone will set you free. This truth alone will set you free. Just stay simple and stay humble.
So, Myrna, I know you need to say our bye-bye officially, but again, thank you so much. Blessing to you. Thank you so much, James. Beautiful, beautiful day. The honor of coming from Mexico to Mindalia. I'm just really so grateful. And all the preparation to do this show was a blessing to me too.
Thank you again. There's not much to say, but thank you for allowing the Mindalia TV cameras for being a channel for your ideas, for your message. Such a beautiful message. And to our audience, of course, we wouldn't want to leave without reminding you that you can collaborate with Mindalia's mission by liking this video, sharing it, leaving us a positive message under the video, and of course subscribing not only to this channel but to our Spanish and Portuguese channel, Mindalia Televisión and Mindalia Televisao. We are grateful for you, for James, for Sunny, and we are sending you a big hug, and until next time, bye bye.